Hey man, what's up?
Are you playing an N64 game?
Yeah?
Without me?
What? Dude, you live in, like, Kansas.
Who is she?
She? Who?
Your new player 2, the side bitch.
Yomi?
Don't say her name.
Free. I'll stop. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah. I've got Gadget Racers. I guess I'll play that instead.
Okay, sorry that I overreacted. Love you.
What? Oh man, never a dull moment around here, huh? So, Gadget Racers. This game brings me back to when the games industry embraced variety over churning out the next edition of Call of Duty, back in the early 2000s at the time of the PS2 and the GameCube. Oh, and the original Xbox, but who played that, am I right? Probably a lot of people actually, I'm very sorry. Back then, there seemed to be a lot more experimentation with games. You'd see weirder and wonderful games coming out of seemingly nowhere. The PlayStation 2 in particular was a treasure trove of odd game titles that were unique and different. Stuff like Urban Reign, Jak and Daxter, Prince of Persia, God Hand, and of course, Road Trip Adventure. Yeah, remember Road Trip Adventure? That one PS2 game I haphazardly did a video on? Well, that video garnered a lot more attention than I anticipated, and I got quite a few people enthusiastically telling me that Road Trip Adventure was actually part of a larger history of toys and gaming. According to some comments, Road Trip Adventure is a game based on a large line of Japanese car toys called Choro-Q, and apparently Choro-Q has games on basically every console imaginable, so yeah, apparently I tapped into some kind of niche fanbase. The most requested of these games was actually the sequel to Road Trip Adventure called Gadget Racers. And being the kind soul I am, I listened, and just like Road Trip Adventure, I went online and picked up a copy for £3. Which then didn't work. So I had to buy another one. And I own 2. I've got a Patreon. So just like last time, we need a name, and since I'm an incredible egotist, we'll just stick with good old Yuusha. What's your favourite food? That's a very personal question, but tacos, thank you for asking. I like Mexican food. What's your least favourite food? That one's easy. Mushrooms. Mushrooms are gross. You're allowed to disagree. Who's your favourite celebrity? Okay. What is this? I don't want to get another earful, so my favourite celebrity is Freezax. Just has to be. Okay. We're just starting. Just right in. The game just starts. No real opening message, objectives, or cutscenes. You answer a few very odd questions, then just kinda get thrown in, exiting your home garage. Garage. Oh man, we're back here again. It's like Road Trip Adventure all over again. I mean, look at all the floaty physics, the awkward turning and chunky vehicles, and what's this? Jumping? There's a jump button now. Well, looks like Gadget Racers has taken some inspiration from Mario Kart. So just like Road Trip Adventure, you get thrown into the game with no real information. The game just says go, and you go. After a short drive around the starting area, I soon discovered that the world is much smaller this time around. You open in this small enclosed area surrounded by a bunch of doors, each emblazoned with a big number, Diddy Kong racing style. This number representing how many flags are required to pass through the door, which I'll get into in just a bit. There are also a few buildings and a big lake for good measure. Going into this, I sure was surprised considering Road Trip Adventure had this huge sprawling world, but let's be honest, the large overworld was pretty empty and ultimately contributed nothing to the game outside of adding some kind of factor that made it kind of feel like a road trip, but even that doesn't have much value since after a while, it just became tedious. It just served as nothing more than padding to waste your time, so in many ways this new smaller approach to the design of the world is better since the areas are much smaller, they can condense all the characters and various encounters in the game to areas you're much more likely to explore, meaning you get much more of the delightful story. I thought this with Road Trip Adventure, but the same applies here. Most of the stories in these games are just anime tropes when you boil them down. Things like friendship, wanting to be the strongest, challenge God. That doesn't necessarily apply 100% of the time though, such as this character called Mean. Okay, she tells you a story of her boyfriend being stolen away by his love of sumo wrestling, so you talk to her a few times to get all the details of the story. Then, once she's finished telling the story and you talk to her again, she quite aggressively tells you to leave her alone. Well, Mean, maybe if you weren't so grouchy your boyfriend wouldn't have left you to wrestle other men. Scott, why would you write something like that? Oh boy, this really went somewhere unexpected. In the starting area, if you go into one of the buildings in the centre of the lake, you encounter this duck who asks you questions as some sort of pop quiz, which is just there to strangely test your knowledge of Gadget Racers and its world and characters. It's very strange, but I kind of like it. It's also pretty funny how whenever you get the answer correct, he acts all upset and actually says grrr. He then rewards you with fertilizer. Okay, which you then give to this guy to help him grow melons. Maybe the cars are actually giant bugs. Hey, it's just a theory. Putting aside the fact that this guy is dressed like a duck, for seemingly no reason, it's a pretty decent distraction from the main game and does sort of encourage you to take note of this game's characters, and trust me, this game has some very interesting characters. These include Le Man, a shady individual who lives at the top of an apartment complex. Yes, cars have apartments, with sofas, and the occasional Thomas the Tank Engine. Huh. Le Man is just weird. When you meet him, he just keeps reminding you, I could be a bad person. Basically saying, I could have stabbed you or killed you, and you just walked in here haphazardly. Then at the end says, but seriously, be more careful. Aww. Some other characters include a couple of brothers, one who sends food to his brother who decided to go live in a cave. You know, as you do. A couple who are having domestic issues with a husband focusing too much on his work, a very common Japanese trope. An angel guy who tells you only a person with a pure heart is able to get past this big blockade of boulders. Foreshadowing? There's also a guy called Chewy who likes to talk about his buddy Han. Oh, and Big Boss. Can't make this stuff up. I really do enjoy all of these characters. They can sometimes surprise you and throw you off guard, such as a character called Coffee, who complains at you for going into her house uninvited. Finally, a video game character who isn't okay with that. So in your travels throughout the world, you'll encounter a wide variety of colourful cars. There's also a handful of cars who play musical instruments, with no arms. Suspension of disbelief can only go so far. These musical cars can be arranged into a band, and the goal is to choose people who play the same kind of music and have them perform together. And if you don't get them quite right, it can sound bad. Remember those weird questions I had to answer at the beginning? Well, it turns out they do actually do something. Something small, admittedly, but it's better than nothing. The foods chosen are used to personalise some conversations in the game to your tastes. It's a very small detail that largely doesn't matter, but wow, thanks for going to the effort, guys. The celebrity thing is just for name dropping a celeb you may like, so whenever they bring up the world popular super celebrity, it's the one that you chose at the beginning. Okay, it's been long enough and I feel it's appropriate to actually try some racing because, you know, that's what racing games are about. So first level, here we go, Lakeside Castle. Well, this is certainly a lot more elaborate for a first track than what we saw in Road to Adventure. The track itself is a bit longer and even has a shortcut which makes use of the jump button, which is great! They added a feature that's actually used. I mean, the physics are still pretty glitchy and weird, so it might not always work out, but I can say the physics, while still pretty bizarre, are somehow a bit better this time? I don't know, they just don't seem to glitch out quite to the same extent as its predecessor. So no more tiny bumps which send you to the moon or spending a full 5 minutes vibrating against the wall waiting for your momentum to disperse. Lakeside Castle helps you learn the basics of what to expect in future tracks. Little obstacles that will appear along the way, including the obstacles which make great use of the jump button with a bit of timing. It's definitely a step up from Peach Town Road to Adventure, which was your bare bones racing track, and that's something you'll see throughout this game a lot. The racing tracks have character. All the tracks are themed with strange and interesting designs, my personal favourite being Hot Sand Ruin M. Not only does it have multiple ways to tackle the course through its use of gadget upgrades, yeah, it's called Gadget Racers for a reason after all, but it makes great use of the jump button, is challenging, and a great race for grinding out cash. There is just one weird thing about this though, and it's something which becomes quite prominent the more you dissect this game. The AI in this game, as in the computer controlled racers, yeah, they only have one way of doing things. They're not particularly difficult or intelligent for that matter, and they're only as challenging as the specs of their vehicle, which you can easily surpass by flashing some cash, which is why it's a good idea to find a track you're comfortable with to grind out some cash. When racing on Hot Sand Ruin M, all of the computer control characters have the hovercraft gadget equipped. This changes their whole body to that of a hovercraft and makes travelling on difficult surfaces like water and sand much easier, and a consequence of this is on the Hot Sand Ruin track, they all go the same route following the stream, which of course means if you choose to not go the hovercraft route and stick with your good old wheels, you can just have a leisurely drive all on your own through these little caves. Like seriously, you'll bump into pretty much nobody. It's kinda weird, but again, this makes it a pretty great track for grinding, so it has its good parts. It can still be a bit tricky since going this way actually requires some decent jumping to make it across the gap. fall in the water and you'll struggle to get back up to first. So the racing, is it fun? How does it work? Well, it's Choro-Q racing. Yeah. What I mean by that is that the racing itself is fairly indistinct. There are no iconic features that make it stand out besides the customization of the cars themselves. I feel like they've put a larger emphasis on your vehicle's customization this time, since they've added more gadgets you can add to your vehicles. And the interesting thing about this is how there's no real one way of tackling things. You can try using different gadgets and see how it works out. There's one big problem I have with the tracks in general though. When you find a track out in the overworld, your first instinct is to enter the track since that will register it, meaning you can then easily retry said race from your garage menu. That's great and makes sense, but the problem is, attempting races is all about trial and error, and the first time you enter an unknown race, you never go in expecting to actually be able to win. You'll head in, have a little drive around, gauge how fast your car's engine is in comparison to the competitors, and see what kinds of gadgets you may need to actually stand a fighting chance of coming out on top. So what it boils down to is entering the track, driving around for maybe 30 seconds or so, then exiting the track to either change your equipment or grind to upgrade. While they've simplified certain things, such as no longer needing to individually upgrade things like brakes, you still have a ton of variety and there's plenty of fun to be had with the car bodies and accessories for on top. But now you can have decorative stickers which let you add a bit of personality to your vehicle, because strapping a big helicopter blade to the top wasn't personality enough. You need a big love heart sticker as the cherry on top of the sundae. Gadget Racers, much like Road Trip Adventure, is a weird racing game with its own unique gimmicks. I mean, it's not a cartoony kart racer like Mario Kart where you pick up item boxes and fire off shells, but it's also not a realistic driving simulator like Gran Turismo or something. It's in some awkward grey area between the two, and what's even more strange is that it's quite fun. It's not super competitive or crazy, there's just something nice about it, but like I said, certain parts of the game can get kinda tedious. People like to refer to Gadget Racers and subsequently Road Trip Adventure as CarPGs. I think it's a pretty appropriate term since it's a car game, but it's built and played sort of like an RPG, and I think it's a pretty decent metaphor. Replace battling with racing and gold with, cats I guess, and you have a CarPG complete with upgradable gear and character customization, as well as areas to explore and side quests to participate in, such as helping this woman car find her giant ring because she's late for something. So naturally, you drive underwater, pick up her giant ring just for her to tell you, "Oh, I'm not actually late to anything, haha, silly me." But like many other characters, she feels the need to reinforce this in a strangely aggressive manner, literally telling you to shoo multiple times. Here I am, cleaning up all their messes, solving all their problems, and all I get is nothing but grief. It's because of how I say garage, isn't it? Something I noticed while going through the game is that they really seem to have improved the game in a few areas. The graphics are slightly better for one, environments have more detailed textures no doubt due to the smaller scale of the world, but little visual things like the loading screen. The menus have also been toned down visually since Road Trip to give it a much more simple layout so you don't need to scrub through long menus of text to see everything. I feel like Gadget Racers really tried to improve upon Road Trip Adventure in almost every way, and it's quite admirable. Things in the game just have more purpose and feel less random. It's a streamlined Choro-Q experience. They traded the large open world for bigger and better minigames, and while I'm on this subject, a few people called me out for not mentioning this in the Road Trip Adventure video, but yes, there's a football minigame in RTA, and it's kinda like Rocket League before Rocket League, only slow, clunky, and well, every time you hit the ball, it's like you're smacking into a building. There you go guys, I said it, got you covered. The minigames in Gadget Racers definitely make more use of the actual gadgets available in the game. This one in particular where you need to make it to the end of the track, hopping across these big leaves within the time limit, and it's damn difficult. Not because of the jumping, but more because it simply doesn't give you enough time. Gadget Racers is everything good about Road Trip Adventure, streamlined and made slightly better. I do understand that some people may not like the fact that it's no longer a true open world experience, since again, that open world had a slight charm to it, but the trade-off makes for a more full game with more purpose to everything and much less empty open spaces. Talking to characters is actually interesting with weird puzzles to figure out, and again, so many passive aggressive people. Everyone needs to chill. I will definitely say if you enjoyed Road Trip Adventure, you'll enjoy Gadget Racers. It's not a perfect racer, it's clunky, awkward, and kinda silly, but you know what? That's not such a bad thing. In an age where every game is focus group tested and there isn't a ton of wiggle room for smaller, sillier games, a bit of strange CarPG fun can serve as a reminder of a simpler time for gaming. I'm glad people commented letting me know of Gadget Racers because it's opened my eyes to the world of Choro-Q games, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to play more. Now, in the meantime, if you'll excuse me, I have a friend who needs a talking to. Free, I am not your girlfriend!
But I love you!
God damn it! Hey you, thank you so much for watching this video. I was amazed by the response to the Road to Adventure video and I just had to try Gadget Racers. I'm always interested to see the kinds of videos people want to see made, so feel free to comment on any fun suggestions you think I might like. Anyways, let's get on with this. Thank you to my buddy Freezax for appearing in this. I know it was silly and one day we will have a proper collab on my channel, but be sure to subscribe to him. He makes great videos talking about N64 games. They're great. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to help ensure many more get made, consider checking out my Patreon and pledging. There are cool rewards and you can pledge as little as $1 and it all helps out tremendously. You can also follow me on Twitter and I have a Facebook page I never use. And lastly, check out my Discord server, links in the description. It's always a good time in there, but again, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
Garage.